Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bases Loaded right here on OTF. I'm your host, Blake Munroe, where I'm joined weekly by CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe. And guys, we're going to do things a little bit different today because, well, things are being done a little bit different on the diamond. You know, normally we don't look at this weekend's games until the end of the show. We're going to start with that, though, as they already played one game against Auburn last night. Of course, Texas wins that one 3-2. But as I saw on Coffee and Football this morning, there was a lot of questions regarding that and, more importantly, the health status of Jared Spencer.
Yeah, Schloss said last night after the game that, it was precautionary. It had more to do with, Spencer didn't quite feel right coming, short week. You get in these regimens where if you're the Friday guy, you got your bullpen day on a certain day, you got your rest day on a certain day, bumping that up. It just didn't feel right. And guys, I thought Schloss said something pretty poignant earlier this week in his availability on Wednesday. He was asked a couple of times about being number one in the country in the SEC championship race. And two quotes he said he had a number of guys in a clubhouse come up and ask him, like, hey, have you ever coached a team that's been number one? And his response was, well, I've never been number one at the end of the year, so it doesn't really matter. And the second thing was he was asked about the SEC championship. He said, would I love to win an SEC championship? That's great. Conference championships are great. He said, that doesn't mean anything when you get to Omaha. It doesn't help you win in Omaha. So Schloss is, when we talk about Schloss being big picture focused, that's the big picture he's talking about. And I love that a Texas baseball coach, not to say David Pierce didn't, but to understand the magnitude of the job, they only put the number on the wall for the year if you do one thing, and that's if you're the last team standing in Omaha. Schloss gets that. He understands what the goal is. So CJ reinforces for me that Schloss gets it, number one. And number two, they're going to be extra careful with their guys. We saw that with Dre Duplantier earlier in the year. If there's even the slightest bit of concern, they'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Is it feels like there's a lot of transparency between the staff, between the guys in the bullpen and the coaching staff, right? And you'd like to see that obviously with your Friday night starter, and in this instance, it was a Thursday night guy against Auburn last night with Jared Spencer. But to know that going into the game, hey, I'm not at 100%. If I start to lose velocity, if I'm not having the spin rate on some of my off speed, probably come take a look at me, right? And that's where we saw a very quick hook last night. It wasn't like Spencer was, unnormally, errant with some of his throws. It wasn't like he was getting lit up by Auburn. There were 2 runs on the board, but he was still finding ways to get out, scratch and claw to get to the next inning. But, to this staff's credit, they're not going to change anything, especially with their number one guy. So I credit them. And of course, it does sound like it's not going to be too serious. I was told that Spencer in the locker room was saying that he was going to be okay. And of course, we heard it from Schloss after the game that, it was just more precautionary, just soreness right now. And of course, soreness is one of those, kind of scary words in baseball where it could mean anything, right? From, just arm fatigue to full on Tommy John. But right now, it doesn't sound like this is going to be anything too serious moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And as of recording time anyway, it sounds like the early returns are positive. So that's obviously good news for the Longhorns, as he's become a crucial part of that puzzle. We'll talk more about the pitching here in a little bit. But for those that aren't aware or maybe need a reminder, Game 2 is played today at 6 p.m. and then Game 3 tomorrow at 12. Remember, they'll be wrapping it up early due to Easter weekend. So be on the lookout. Both of those games will be on SEC Network Plus, whatever it may be. But guys, I want to actually go back a little bit here and let's take a rewind. We last spoke a week ago when it comes to baseball. They were going to face off against Kentucky. They go 2-1 against Kentucky. And then a win on Tuesday night against UTRGV. And then, of course, as we talked about, the win yesterday. But what did, what's y'all's biggest takeaways from the last 5 games? And what did you learn, if anything?
I think there's still kind of a work in progress to find that replacement in the outfield for Max Bellou. And it's going to really be a relief when he returns to this lineup. But Texas has figured out, piece after piece, who they think can work in that outfield, who they think can find a piece for that bat, right? who's going to replace, a former Big 12 player of the year? That's not an easy thing to do, but, they're finding ways to win games right now. And I know that there's a conversation about the offense maybe going in a rut. I know that 15-inning game in Kentucky wasn't a fun game to watch if you watch the entire thing, but it's a good thing that they're winning games without one of the more important pieces in their lineup. And look, I think long-term, these might be beneficial at bats for Jaden Duplantier, Easton Winfield. I know it hasn't been a pretty, season for him statistically, but at least you're finding ways to get an idea of what you got right now and moving forward. The question is, will you be able to sustain without Ballou before he gets back? So far, they've answered every question that's come their way.
Yeah, I think a big part of that, CJ, is getting Ethan Mendoza back in the lineup really quick. Even if he's got a DH for a little bit, having him be the catalyst and set the table at the top is huge. I mean, I know Schussler had the big blow in the Thursday game, and Jalen Flores came up with a big clutch. But you can make the argument Ethan Mendoza was the reason you won that game. He had the RBI single to get you on the board, and his opposite field hit before the Flores double. Blake, that's what we call in baseball. That's just a nice piece of hitting. I love how, Blake, I don't know if you saw this coming. CJ, I don't know if you saw this coming either. I mean, we knew Mendoza was good. We knew he, had good strike zone discipline, controlled the bat really well. But the way he uses all parts of the field, like the second hit he had in the Thursday game, just to kind of let the ball get deep and then just kind of poke it out there, into right field and set the table. I love the way he handles the bat and sets the table for this lineup. So I'm less concerned about Tommy Farmer and Gumbo Duplantier as I am the fact that you got Adrian Rodriguez back in the lineup and he's able to hit righty and lefty. So you can get him, doing whatever you need him to do based on matchups. And if Mendoza's back, I think they'll be able to piece it together. This is, Blake, I think you made the comment on the message board over at ontexasfootball.com. There are a lot of really good college baseball teams this year, but I don't think there's a great team in college baseball. So I think right now Texas is clearly in that group of very good teams, and I think they'll continue to be that as long as, if you've got Mendoza and Rodriguez back with the way Galvan swinging the bat, Flores always seems to come up clutch.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that I'm brushing aside the concerns people have about the bottom of the order, but I'm almost willing to concede that until Max Ballou gets back, as long as you continue to get the other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Man, and talking about it, Mendoza, just such a smart baseball player. And honestly, as much noise as he's made this year, he came on Coffee and Football with us right after he, committed to Texas, coming out of the portal from Arizona State. And he said second base this year, but next year I'm gunning for that shortstop spot. And so I'm kind of curious to see, if that transition eventually happens or not, and what kind of player he continues to grow into, offensively as well. But man, I mean, just such an important pickup there for the Longhorns, getting him earlier in the year.
Yeah, his bat's been tremendous. And to that point, Blake, I don't want to look too far down the line, but I know Adrian Rodriguez will be gunning for that shortstop spot as well. So you're going to have some highly contested battle over for the shortstop spot. Fortunately, you've got a lot of guys who have fielded a lot of ground balls at the dish, had a lot of big time at bats. In this lineup, again, it's just continued to improve as the season's continued. And hopefully, we'll see that bottom of the order continue to catch fire and, pick it back up for the rest of this Auburn series.
Yeah. Well, guys, before we move on here, I need to tell everyone about one of our sponsors today, and that's Chinook Seedery. They make the best sunflower seeds around. They come in 8 different flavors. You've heard me rave about them all baseball season long right here on Bases Loaded. Be sure to check them out in your favorite store or go online, order them online, chinookseedery.com. And they, like I said, 8 flavors. You will find one that you like. I guarantee it. And you will love it, based in Austin. That's chinookseedery.com. And guys, as we do every week right here, this is the first time we had a consensus last week, but now it's even more important of a consensus, unless you're the coaching staff. Then, as you said, Jeff, they don't care about the ranking right now, but Texas, number 1 in all polls. And this is the first time, I believe, in 3 years, fellas.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. That's a drought by Texas's standards, but hey, bagging number one, what a job by this coaching staff, right? I knew that Texas baseball was going to be headed in the right direction. I didn't think it would take, about 30 games, 35 games to get to this point. That's remarkable. So on top of, a few injuries in the lineup, the way that this pitching staff has completely dominated the season, it's been remarkable. And again, it's just blew my mind how quickly they've gotten to this point. But to your point, Jeff, hey, it means nothing if you're number one April 18th, right? That number one only matters if you're the last team to dogpile in Omaha.
Yeah, the fact that they're 31-5 is the best start since 2004, and as they keep winning, I think that should reinforce for everybody that remembers it, and even if you don't. Augie Garrido won 2 national championships at Texas. The 2014, I don't think I'm out of pocket saying this, that was his most talented team. I mean, when you can look at your bullpen and Jay Brent Cox is your setup guy for Houston Street, I mean, it's nasty. And, I mean, they were the best team in the country. They just ran into a really hot Fullerton team, and that was the first year that they did the championship series. So in Omaha. So and there have been some good Texas teams since that 04 team. Like I said, the team the next year won the national championship. But the fact that this team is on that same pace, it's as great a years as we see around here. This kind of thing, this special of a year doesn't happen too often. So I hope Longhorn fans are enjoying how special this is.
Yes. And that actually leads me to something that I wanted to bring up today, fellas. At the beginning of the year, there was a lot of question marks when it comes to the pitching staff. We thought Texas was going to have to rely heavily on offense, that type of deal. And I was looking at the conference statistics today before, we recorded this. And you look at those offensive statistics, Texas is obviously doing well. I mean, middle of the pack among the SEC. But then you look at pitching, and, I mean, they're top in nearly everything. It's just crazy to me how much it's flipped from what we thought it was going to be to what it actually is, and again, as you said, Jeff, 31-5 overall record, 14-2 conference record. So it's obviously working, but it's just wild to me because we didn't expect what we're seeing like this.
Yeah, that was one of my big concerns coming into the year. Is maybe not a concern, but it was an unknown, right? You had a lot of young guys, you had a lot of transfer arms. You didn't quite know who would be the pieces that would take over late game situations, right? It was kind of the expectation that Ruger Riojas was that guy. And yet we've seen it from Max Grubbs. We've obviously seen it from Dylan Volantis, who I think has a great argument for SEC freshman pitcher of the year with the way that he's gone about shutting doors in the back end of games. But it's more than that, right? It's Luke Harrison, it's Jared Spencer, it's Jason Flores, right? You've got plenty of arms right now. It's Duplantier. I mean, there's all sorts of weapons out of that bullpen that you can rely on that I just didn't quite know was going to be the case coming into the year. So pounding the damn zone has been the motto for the Texas pitchers. And, I mean, the way that they've been going about their business, it's such a relief to know that that's not going to change. It's me knocking on wood moving forward for the rest of the year and into the postseason.
DTZ, man, the arm farm is for real. And I'll say this, two guys that I don't think we could talk enough about, with Volantis. It's funny that Schloss came into the year saying, hey, look, a lot of freshmen, it's really tough for freshmen to play in this league, let alone have an impact. Well, between what Adrian Rodriguez is doing with the bat and what Volantis is doing on the mound, and, for a young guy, a relief role early on is really good for him because he can be a 2-pitch guy. He doesn't need to develop a third pitch or whatever. I mean, if he's got that fastball working with his curveball, that's going to fool a lot of hitters, and it's made a lot of guys look foolish already. He's got 9 saves, guys, and we're just about halfway through conference play. So, CJ, you're right. I mean, Volantis, every superlative you want to throw on a freshman pitcher, he's worthy of it. And then Max Grubbs, it's just cool how Max Wiener, we've seen really good player development in football with Sark, and I think you're seeing it with Max Wiener. Coaches that are just really good at development, they don't need, the best of the best to get the job done. They've done it with portal guys. They've done it with a guy like Volantis that they recruited, and then a guy like Max Grubbs who they inherited. And it's not like Max Grubbs has just suddenly developed, lights out stuff. I mean, he's a sinker ball pitcher that just does a really good job of keeping the ball down. And when you're a sinker ball pitcher that keeps the ball down, yeah, you're going to get a lot of contact, but it's contact. You're letting the defense work behind you. And credit, man, especially in that Thursday game, Jalen Flores had some nice defensive plays. Casey Borba had a really critical one early in the game. And then maybe the guy that, there's a lot of really good things about this team, but the job Kimball Schuessler has done defensively at first base, really kind of one of the unsung heroes. Is good for him. It felt like he was due for a big hit. I feel like I always say that about Schuessler because it seems like he's always making contact just right to people. So to see him get the homer in the Thursday game was nice. But man, he's been you'll let his bat kind of figure itself out, and he can work with some things as long as you're getting that kind of defense from him at first base. He's been awesome at first base defensively.
And going back to pitching, I was looking as well before last night's game. Texas has thrown 64% of its pitches for strikes, total a 61% clip in 0-0 counts and a 64% mark in 1-1 counts. They boast a 2.7 strikeout to walk ratio, and they currently rank second nationally in ERA and are number 1 in the SEC now. So just a dominating performance across the board on something we thought could, very, very strongly could be a question mark at the beginning of the season. Very cool for sure. So my next question to y'all is, we're seeing a lot of these award watch lists come out where, players, Texas has had its fair share of SEC players of the week. Who's your midseason MVP?
Ooh.
I'm going to follow Schloss's lead. I was talking about that 2004 Texas team. I mean, you could rotate Curtis Thigpen and Taylor Teagarden at catcher. So you had two, big league type guys behind the plate. And Schloss said there's never been a really good team without a really good catcher, and there's never been a great team without a great catcher. I'm going to go with Rylan Galvan. And this sounds simple, but it's kind of the beauty of baseball. Schloss got asked this week, hey, what's been the secret to Galvan turning things around at the plate where now he's hitting for average in addition to all the things he does? He said the main thing Tulo did with Galvan was removing the fear of striking out. Okay, if you strike out, it's no big deal. I mean, if you strike out or fly out, whatever, it still counts as an out. So don't let it bother you. Just go get it back the next time. Like I said, it's something that sounds so simple, but I think once you remove that seed of doubt from a player and they can really just kind of let loose, let their hair down, and just have fun playing a game, it's amazing what kind of a difference it can make. So I'm going to go with Galvan. Just Ethan Mendoza would be a close second for me, and you can pick any one of the pitchers, but to me, it starts with Galvan. CJ?
I think that's where I was going to go, was Ethan Mendoza in the lineup. Lead your team in runs, lead your team in hits. He has 25 walks as well, which is a pretty underrated aspect of his game. Just a guy at the top of the lineup that is going to find a way to get on base. I don't know if there was an on-base streak for him at some point, but it feels like every single game I'm seeing him trot around the bases multiple times. And, we talk about, the back end of the lineup that's, pretty inconsistent, and it's coming along. But I know that at the very top, as long as Ethan Mendoza gets 4 or 5 at-bats, Texas is going to score a run or two, right? I just know that to be the case. On top of that, look, I don't know how pitching, I can't just go to Dylan Volantis, right? A 1.08 ERA, 33 innings pitch. You mentioned 9 saves. How about 44 Ks in those 33 innings as a true freshman, right? That's remarkable. And I was thinking yesterday, watching the game on Thursday, saying, I'd love to sit in the box just to see an at-bat from him. I feel like that hook coming from as that arm angle on the left side, that's got to be something that folks just don't see often. And you mentioned, Jeff, the 2 pitches. Look, the way that he mixes and mashes, the way that it looks like it's the same pitch coming until it breaks at the last minute for each hitter, I can't imagine that's an easy sight in that box. So that's probably my MVP if I had to say, both in the lineup, Ethan Mendoza, and then, with the arms, it'd probably be Dylan Volantis.
Yeah. By the way, CJ, in terms of your leaders right now for Texas after the Thursday game and on base percentage, the 2 guys we talked about, Galvan is leading the team 496, and Mendoza's at 470. So
pretty good.
Yeah, those guys are doing a great. That's good to quite good. Yeah, both those guys are doing a great job getting on base. And by the way, Galvan has 6 steals. He only had 4 stolen bases his first 2 years, and the guy's got 6 steals and 8 tries this year. So
wow, I did not realize that.
Good for him.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. I did not realize that at all. All right, guys, let me tell y'all about Tackle Addict. Are you an avid fisherman who's always searching for the right supplies? Well, then do yourself a favor. Check out tackleaddict.com, owned and operated by former Longhorn Brian Robinson and former Longhorn baseball great Brandon Belt. Tackle Addict has everything you need for the best in today's fishing equipment. And Tackle Addict is for the everyday fisherman and serious pros alike. Get their product shipped to you directly from the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's Tackle Addict, ADDICT.com. And Brian and Brandon say hook 'em. Okay, well, before we get out of here, I do have a couple of other things that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, we talk baseball a lot, but how about softball last night, fellas? I don't know if y'all got a chance to see. They're hosting a top 5 LSU squad. Texas, the bats aren't hot for the ladies. And then, we had the first base incident, which if you haven't seen, we can't show due to copyright issues. But you can go on Twitter or YouTube, and I'm sure it's plastered all over there. So watch that. If you're anybody but an LSU fan, you're probably going to say it was a very dirty play. But then Texas, the first time in program history with a walk-off grand slam to win it all. Amazing. And hats off to Coach Mike White and his crew.
Yeah, what a game, what a win. And what an environment, too, right? Another top 10 series, at McCombs Field. I was driving along, outside the stadiums, just minding my business on a Thursday. I see 4 jets fly over. I'm like, are we under attack? What's the deal here? No, it's just a flyover for a Thursday afternoon top 10 matchup in the SEC. That's Texas softball for you. I loved it. And for it to end that way with kind of the drama in the middle of it, what a win. Again, it's good to see Texas softball get back on the winning side of things and know that number 1 move to a number 3. But, hey, that's a heck of a win and hopefully something that sparks some momentum moving forward.
Yeah, I'm not to be, guy that looks ahead at the schedule, but I'm just thinking about next weekend. Softball is in Norman against OU, and we know what that series means.
Yep.
Baseball's at home about A&M, and I don't think I need to say anything else other than that. That is a CJ Vogel Yeti Yard series, if ever there was one.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought that up because, what I had posted on ontexasfootball.com, Jeff, you brought up about there being a lot of really good teams, but maybe not many great teams. And I asked somebody this morning that I talk to about baseball regularly, their thoughts on A&M. And they said, well, we've seen how they handle, that preseason number 1 ranking, what happened. But now they're curious to see how they're going to handle having a little success. I mean, they're starting to look like the real deal guys, like we thought they were going to look like. So my question to y'all is, are they the real deal or is it fool's gold?
I think right now you're seeing what A&M was expected to be, right? They came in with very much the same lineup as a year ago in which they went to the College World Series. It was a strike away from hoisting the trophy. This was kind of the expectation, is that they were led by the bats and, the arms followed. And that has kind of been completely flip-flopped down in College Station. So I know that it's an 8 or 9 game win streak currently for the Aggies. I said it last night on Twitter, and I don't know if I completely believe it to be true, right? They still got to play 2 more games against Arkansas this weekend. But it's not going to be surprising to me if they enter that series next weekend against Texas with a number by their name. And could you imagine, after all the ups and downs for A&M this year, to come in with a number, play what could be the number 1 team in the country with Texas? I know roles kind of were reversed in terms of the expectations coming into the year, but that's going to be a heck of a series. It was already going to be. But now that, the stakes are heightened quite a bit with the way that they've been playing recently.
Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom before you can bounce back up. And we weren't quite sure where that was going to be for A&M given their early season struggles. They haven't lost since that run rule loss to Tennessee on a Friday night in Knoxville. They ended up winning the last 2 games there. They haven't lost since. Swept South Carolina. Like you said, CJ, they got a doubleheader against Arkansas as we're recording this today on Friday, so we'll see what happens there. We got to sweep of South Carolina, finished off Tennessee. Yeah, offensively, if they're healthy, they're one of the best offensive lineups in the country. There's no question. And, Jace Laviolette getting it together. It was only a matter of time before he was going to start hitting. I still don't know about their pitching, but, yeah, offensively, that it seems like every time Texas faces somebody, we said it against LSU, said it against Georgia, probably talking about against A&M. I mean, that could be the best lineup Texas sees all year. And I think this speaks to something Schloss said. He remembers Tim Corbin one year after the SEC tournament going into the postseason. He said, "Look, I'll move to the AL East. Like, I just don't want to see another SEC team in the postseason. I mean, this league, it's fun for us to watch. It's got to be a miserable existence for those coaches to have to feel like you're in a super regional every weekend. And that next weekend at Dish, man, that's gonna feel every bit like a super regional. At least it should."
Oh, don't you know that they're ecstatic, though, that it's at home and not in College Station for so many reasons? I mean, they have to be beyond thrilled about that part of it. No doubt about it.
Can I toss this out real quick?
Yeah, what you got?
Does Missouri win an SEC game this year?
Ooh.
They're 0-16 currently, and they're not those games aren't close.
I mean, you figured their best chance was maybe to get one over on A&M, but then the Aggies got hot. So, it just kind of sucks to suck, man.
I'm voting no.
Well, I take that back. Missouri's got A&M. They go to Bluebell at the end of the year. So, but A&M's hot. It's going to be a tall order for Mizzou to win an SEC game. Like I said, I was trying to give them a little bit of respect and some benefit of the doubt when they played Texas, but it's rough, guys. They're bad.
And I'm looking at their schedule right now. Of course, they finished this weekend, against number 16 Oklahoma, and then next weekend they head to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama, and then after that they have Georgia. And then, as you said, A&M, and then Mississippi State as the closer. But sandwiched in between that, they play a pretty dang good Kansas team twice as well. So, to answer your original question, I don't think so. But it's baseball. You never know what could happen.
Now, I'll ask you this: is that Mississippi State series? Is that in Starkville or is that in Columbia?
It is in Columbia.
Maybe they get one over on Mississippi State.
All right, 1-29. Punch it in.
Maybe. But if I'm Chris Lamonis, there's no way I want my team to be the answer to a trivia question. Like, who was that one for Missouri in 2025? So I don't know, man. It's gonna be a tall order. Like I said, that's somebody's got to be last place in the league, and unfortunately, it's just Missouri this year.
Speaking of trivia, we'll close on this. And Jeff, you probably know the answer to this. What famous actor did Augie Garrido cut from his baseball team?
I'm going to give CJ a crack at it.
I don't really follow acting all that much. I'm not a movie guy. I'll just throw McConaughey, though I don't see him throwing a bat or throwing a ball or a bat ever in his life.
Do you know, Jeff?
Is it Costner?
Kevin Costner at Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah. Not even at Texas.
Yeah, one time. This is just. I'm glad you opened the door, Blake, to tell an Augie story. I forget who the reporter was that asked him, but it was Augie did a walk-off after he answered the question, and he said, "Do you know that movie for Love of the Game or something about clearing the mechanism? Is that what you're talking about?" And Augie just looks at the guy. He goes, "Yeah, I wrote the damn thing for Costner," and then he just walked off. I'm like, "That's just perfect. That's classic Augie." So yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I was actually taking a stroll down memory lane yesterday on some Augie Garrido stuff and going back and looking and reading and came across that, and so just thought I'd share. And when you said trivia, it sparked a thing in my brain there that'd be a good thing to close on.
Man, so, anytime we can talk about Coach Garrido is a good time. I'm not going to turn down the opportunity.
Definitely, he is one of a kind, no doubt about it. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Bases Loaded. Want to thank Tackle Addict and Chinook Seedery for sponsoring today's show. Of course, we'll be back same time, same place next week. Hope you all have a great weekend and a happy Easter. And for CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe, I'm Blake Munroe, and we'll see you next time.